Chapter 2 of The World Set Free by H.G. Wells. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Adam Marsatich. June 2009, Alexandria, Virginia. The World Set Free by H.G. Wells. Chapter the Second. The Last War. Section 5. A recent historical writer has described the world of that time as one that believed in established words and was invincibly blind to the obvious in things. Certainly it seems now that nothing could have been more obvious to the people of the earlier 20th century than the rapidity with which war was becoming impossible. And certainly they did not see it. They did not see it until the atomic bombs burst in their fumbling hands. Yet the broad facts must have glared upon any intelligent mind. All through the 19th and 20th centuries, the amount of energy that men were able to command was continually increasing. Applied to warfare, that meant that the power to inflict a blow, the power to destroy, was continually increasing. There was no increase whatever in the ability to escape. Every sort of passive defense, armor, fortifications, and so forth, was being outsmarted by this tremendous increase on the destructive side. Destruction was becoming so facile that any little body of malcontents could use it. It was revolutionizing the problems of police and internal rule. Before the last war began, it was a matter of common knowledge that a man could carry about in a handbag an amount of latent energy sufficient to wreck half a city. These facts were before the minds of everybody. The children in the streets knew them. And yet the world still, as the Americans used to phrase it, fooled around with the paraphernalia and pretensions of war. It is only by realizing this profound, this fantastic divorce between the scientific and intellectual movement on the one hand, and the world of the lawyer-politician on the other, that the men of a later time can hope to understand this preposterous state of affairs. Social organization was still in the barbaric stage. There were already great numbers of actively intelligent men and much private and commercial civilization, but the community, as a whole, was aimless, untrained, and unorganized to the pitch of imbecility. Collective civilization, the modern state, was still in the womb of the future. Section 6. But let us return to Frederick Barnet's Wanderjahr, and its account of the experiences of a common man during the wartime. While these terrific disclosures of scientific possibility were happening in Paris and Berlin, Barnet and his company were industriously entrenching themselves in Belgian Luxembourg. He tells of the mobilization, and of his summer day's journey through the north of France and the Ardennes in a few vivid phrases. The country was browned by a warm summer, the trees a little touched with autumnal color, and the wheat already golden. When they stopped for an hour at Hirson, men and women with tricolor badges upon the platform distributed cakes and glasses of beer to the thirsty soldiers, and there was much cheerfulness. "Such good, cool beer it was," he wrote. "I had nothing to eat nor drink since Epsom." A number of monoplanes, "like giant swallows," he notes, were scouting in the pink evening sky. Barnet's battalion was sent through the Sedan country to a place called Virton, and thence to a point in the woods on the line to Jamai. Here they detrained, bivouacked uneasily by the railway, trains and stores were passing along it all night, and next morning he marched through a cold overcast dawn, and a morning, first cloudy and then blazing, over a large spacious countryside interspersed by forests towards Arlon. There the infantry were set to work upon a line of masked entrenchments and hidden rifle pits between St. Hubert and Virton that were designed to check and delay any advance from the east upon the fortified line of the Meuse. They had their orders, and for 2 days they worked without either a sight of the enemy or any suspicion of the disaster that had abruptly decapitated the armies of Europe, and turned the west of Paris and the centre of Berlin into blazing miniatures of the destruction of Pompeii. And the news, when it did come, came attenuated. We heard there had been mischief with airplanes and bombs in Paris, Barney relates, but it didn't seem to follow that they weren't still somewhere elaborating their plans and issuing orders. When the enemy began to emerge from the woods in front of us, we cheered and blazed away, and didn't trouble much more about anything but the battle in hand. If now and then one cocked up an eye into the sky to see what was happening there, the rip of a bullet soon brought one down to the horizontal again. That battle went on for 3 days all over a great stretch of country between Louvain on the north and Longwy to the south. It was essentially a rifle and infantry struggle. The airplanes did not seem to have taken any decisive share in the actual fighting for some days, though no doubt they effected the strategy from the first by preventing surprise movements. They were aeroplanes with atomic engines, but they were not provided with atomic bombs, which were manifestly unsuitable for field use, nor indeed had they any very effective kind of bomb. And though they maneuvered against each other, and there was rifle shooting at them and between them, there was little actual aerial fighting. Either the airmen were indisposed to fight, or the commanders on both sides preferred to reserve these machines for scouting. After a day or so of digging and scheming, Barney found himself in the forefront of a battle. He had made his section of rifle pits chiefly along a line of deep dry ditch that gave a means of intercommunication. He had had the earth scattered over the adjacent field, and he had masked his preparations with tussocks of corn and poppy. The hostile advance came blindly and unsuspiciously across the fields below, and would have been very cruelly handled indeed, if some one away to the right had not opened fire too soon. It was a queer thrill when these fellows came into sight, he confesses, and not a bit like maneuvers. They halted for a time on the edge of the wood, and then came forward in an open line. They kept walking nearer to us and not looking at us, but away to the right of us. Even when they began to be hit, and their officers' whistles broke upon them, they didn't seem to see us. One or two halted to fire, and then they all went back towards the wood again. They went slowly at first, looking round at us. Then the shelter of the wood seemed to draw them, and they trotted. I fired rather mechanically and missed. Then I fired again, and then I became earnest to hit something, made sure of my sighting, and aimed very carefully at blue-black that was dodging about in the corn. At first I couldn't satisfy myself and didn't shoot. His movements were so spasmodic and uncertain. Then I think he came to a ditch or some such obstacle, and halted for a moment. "Got you," I whispered, and pulled the trigger. I had the strangest sensation about that man. In the first instance, when I felt that I had hit him, I was irradiated with joy and pride. I sent him spinning. He jumped and threw up his arms. Then I saw the corner